All right, I want to talk about MIP-15 or Map Improvement Proposal 15 with Hivemapper. It's the most recent one that just came out. So essentially, you're putting into place a token burn mechanism. So as revenue comes into the project and consumers buy the data, a percentage of that revenue goes to burning tokens out of the supply. And my first reaction is, well, they should have done this a while ago. Actually, Ariel came out and tweeted as much, that this was a miss on their part. So I applaud him for acknowledging that this is something they should have already done. Most DePIN projects have a burn mechanism in place, and I think it's a good idea for a number of reasons. For starters, it ties the success of the project to the token itself. You have deflation, so scarcity is normally good for token prices, but it also gives us visibility into how much revenue is coming into the project. And that actually led into my second thought, which is I have to think they have some revenue that's going to be coming through the door and might be on the verge of signing some substantial contracts, because I find it hard to believe they would want to push this MIP out, because this is more or less going to put them under the microscope to an extent. Normally how this works is as revenue comes in, the burn goes into a burn wallet, which you can see on chain, and you'll be able to see in the Solana Explorer. So that's kind of reading between the lines and complete speculation on my part. But, I have to think that if they're putting this into place, they must be on the verge of signing some contracts. There were a couple AMAs where Ariel said that they were doing some proof of concepts with some notable companies that we would recognize the name of. And I've worked for tech startups, and that's very normal to do a proof of concept. And then once you prove it out, then you sign, a contract and get revenue through the doors. But he also mentioned that a lot of them are wanting to stay under NDA, so they might not be able to release the names of the customers they're working with. But this would, in essence, allow them to show on chain that there is real revenue coming through the door, which would be a very good thing for this project. We'll have to see what happens in the coming weeks and months, but I do want to dig into the details. So the original submission was on April 9th, and they solidified the details on the 16th. So they originally came out with two different options and left it open for people in the community to discuss it. The first was that, for revenue coming into the project, 80% of that revenue would go to token burns, and 20% would be reminted as consumption rewards. In other words, if you collected imagery and that imagery was purchased, then 20% of that revenue would come back to you in the form of honey tokens. And the other 80% would be burned out of the supply and go into that burn wallet. And option number two was that it would be 50% that went to the burn, and the other 50% would be redistributed in the form of honey tokens to mapping contributors. But with that option, there was a 200,000 per week honey cap. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these two options because they've already decided on which option they're going to go with, which is kind of a hybrid between the two. Now, here's what they actually ended up landing on. So it's kind of a hybrid between the two. Like I said, instead of there being 80% that goes to the token burns, now it's 75%, and the other 25% would go to the mapping contributor in the form of consumption rewards. And they raised the cap from 200,000 to 500,000 per week. And that actually makes a really big difference. And I'm going to show you how I actually put together some different examples. So it's a pretty easy calculation, actually, if you want to figure out how much revenue would need to come in on a weekly basis in order to trigger that cap of 500,000 tokens. Because again, that 500,000 is 25% of the revenue. So if you just take 2 million, which would be the full revenue event that would need to happen, and multiply it by the price of honey at any given time, that will tell you how much revenue would trigger that cap. And I actually put together some different examples here. And it's very much reliant on the price of honey. Just running some different scenarios, you'll see if honey were to drop to 5 cents, obviously none of us want to see that, but if you just take 2 million and you multiply it by the price of honey, that would get you to that far right column over there of $100,000. So that would be the total revenue that would need to come in on a weekly basis if honey were at 5 cents. And again, 25% of that, or 25,000, would be going to consumption rewards, 75,000 would go to the token burn. So anything above and beyond $100,000 in this scenario with honey at 5 cents would result in a token burn. Now, this changes very quickly. If the price of honey, let's say in this bull run, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's say honey gets to $1, these numbers can change drastically. So again, take 2 million times the price of honey, you need $2 million in revenue to trigger that cap. So in this case, 500,000 tokens times $1, $500,000 would be able to go out in consumption rewards, and the token burn would be 1.5 million. Now, again, if honey were at $1, anything above and beyond $2 million would result in a token burn. So 100% of the revenue over $2 million would be a token burn. I'd say that there should be some correlation, though, between the revenue coming in on a weekly basis and the token price. The more revenue we see coming in, you would think, in theory, the price of honey should follow and would go up. Anyway, that's how that cap works. Hopefully that makes sense. There's one other thing they did say, though, I thought was interesting. They recognize in the long run, honey could become too scarce for map data customers to acquire. As they state below there, billions of honey would have to be burned from the supply. But I would say, if we got to the point where you had that type of burn going on, the honey price would be going up, and that would limit how many honey tokens would be burned. But they did leave it open for future MIPs to adjust it if necessary. So all in all, I think the fact that they are incorporating a burn mechanism is the most important thing here. As revenue comes through the door, we will see deflation in the supply. That is a good thing for everyone involved. Yeah, it's nice to have consumption rewards. And as you see, if the price of honey goes up, that will increase the US dollar value of the consumption rewards that we can receive and, well, what that cap is. Now, if the price of honey goes down and some big contracts come through, we could absolutely start hitting that cap. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But all in all, I am in favor of this. I think it's something they should have done from the beginning. But put your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious what other people think about this. All right, thanks, y'all.